Hello indie game fans, it's another insane week of new releases with 37 titles of interest, so let's get started with NanoApostle, a pixel art boss rush title that has you playing as a little girl, augmented with nanomachines as she takes on cybernetic experiments in order to escape. This looks very intense in that Fury kind of way, although the more classic 3/4 view might be easier to control rather than the more 3D look of that game, and rightfully so, has combat at the center of the experience. There are plenty of skills to learn, a dodge and parry system, a limited ability to fire off a deadly projectile, and something known as the destruction point system, in which you need to exploit vulnerable points on your opponents, looking pretty sleek and might be a challenge. I did preview Critter Cove when looking at the best upcoming games of the month, a 3D open world live sim RPG that sure does look like furry My Time at Portia. However, I do think that there's something to this game in terms of how its Steam Next Festival demo was received, as well as the variety of live sim systems like farming, fishing and crafting. Your goal is to restore the town in the post-apocalypse in order to make it an attractive tourist destination once again, with larger mysteries to uncover across the entire archipelago of islands. This will be an early access release, with plans for a full launch sometime next year, which possibly means more content to come and looks like it's for cozy game fans. One of the most impressive looking roguelite platformers is Elsie, a pixel art title that has been in development for quite a while and finally makes it to launch next week. It has bits of Mega Man in this as you blast through an army of robots in order to save the world. The pixel art and action are the highlight, looking so colourful and vibrant, but I worry that there's too much going on visually for the player to be able to discern what is going on, since you can have little droids orbiting your character which fires projectiles of their own, and that is in addition to the almost bullet hell style attack patterns of enemies, with there being variety in the form of at least 2 playable characters. Love indie games? Sign up to my newsletter to get a weekly dose of what's hot, along with some news and of course, weekly game giveaways, so if interested, link is in the description below. The follow-up to the roguelite immersive sim first-person shooter Void Bastards is named Wild Bastards, a game that is similar in concept, but is a different spin on things, presenting you with a cast of characters to control, but this time they are handcrafted unique characters to recruit rather than randomly generated prisoners. You are leading the most notorious outlaw gang on their escapades through the galaxy, having to manage interpersonal relationships between the characters and to heal them up in between missions, choosing which character goes on which mission. There is a campaign, so I'm interested to see how the roguelite portion works, but still, based on how great the first game is, watch my tier list video to find out more. This should be of interest. Survival horror game fans are eating well these days, since Capcom is firing on all cylinders and indie games are as well, with the next title of interest being Hollowbody. This has a tech noir theme, so it's a little bit different, set in a long abandoned British city in a place known as the Exclusion Zone, a 20-mile wide area of death which is walled off from the outside. Our protagonist is searching for her partner amid the debris and monsters, with classic survival horror looking elements like key items to find, puzzles to solve, inventory management, and probably limited ammo to deal with enemies. This has been likened to Silent Hill in spots over Resident Evil, so if you're a fan of that, do check this out. Speaking of horror games, a game with a large amount of hype behind it is Backrooms Media, using the now viral setting of the Backrooms and SCP adjacent enemies and locations as the backdrop for this survival horror game. You have to work together with your friends in order to escape, although honestly speaking, I have no idea what the gameplay entails, since the trailer just shows a lot of running away from monsters, but hey, it's capitalizing on the trend, so maybe that momentum will be enough for it to get an audience. Here's an interesting title with a decent amount of hype behind it as well, which does not look like much, but trust me, there's more to Cat God Wrench than meets the eye. It's a symbol building roguelite, for lack of a better term, following in the footsteps of Luck Be a Landlord, but instead of spinning slots, you are placing animals down on spots where their position relative to other animals will determine your reward. As such, it's an alternate take on the formula, which looks interesting and will be for strategy roguelite fans. A game that doesn't really show all that well in the trailer but might be of interest is Dice Player 1, a roguelite strategy game in which you are rolling dice and manipulating them in order to get the highest score. There are a variety of symbols and characters on the dice to the tune of over 300 of them, which should lead to interesting strategy and follows a trend of gambling adjacent roguelites like Balatro and Dungeons and Degenerate Gamblers, but with dice instead, and could be neat. Here's a release that you might not be aware of since they have not changed their date, but their publisher did reach out and we have the Steam and Switch release of Downfall this week, after previously releasing on mobile. This is a side-scrolling action roguelite with a little bit of Vampire Survivors influence, although not as direct a clone, with an art style reminiscent of Darkest Dungeon as well. Their press release speaks of a 10% launch discount, so I'm inferring that this is a premium game with microtransactions stripped out and might be worth a look. Another title which is pretty hyped is Edge of Sanity, a 2D side-scrolling survival horror game with a cosmic horror theme. You were part of a resupply team in Alaska, where of course something has gone horribly wrong on a cosmic level and you are now struggling to survive, battling against your own sanity as well as monsters. Every member of the crew is important and has that scavenging survival horror kind of gameplay loop with real-time combat as well, looking pretty promising.
Good evening, Vermont. This is your host on WKWB. As we embrace the first snowfall of the season, there's nothing like a perfect song to set the mood. So here's a track that'll make you feel right at home. Coming up next.
I don't know how this developer is pulling it off, but the Fears to Fathom series is a horror anthology comprising of small, self-contained experiences, with the earlier entry on Steam, Ironbark Lookout from 2023, having 3,200 Steam reviews as of recording, which means many copies sold, and the next entry is Woodbury Getaway. You play as a 23-year-old consultant who decides to organize a weekend getaway with her college friends in a rental home where something of course goes horribly wrong, although the trailer and description doesn't tell you what it is, with the creepy, low-fidelity visuals adding to the vibes. From the developer of Peglin, in conjunction with developer May Gardens, comes Fowl Damage, a precision puzzle rage platformer where you play as an egg, where the default jump provides enough height to kill you. As a fragile little egg, you do of course have to be careful where you jump, otherwise the egg will crack, with of course a variety of hazards and traps to wrap your head around. Curiously enough, the concept has been done before, in 2024 no less, with the release of Leap Year, but this seems like it had more time in the oven, so maybe there's more content in this game. Funko Pop fans, can I get a hell yeah in the comments below? I honestly want to know how many of you like these collectibles, which have been described as soulless by some, but I'm pretty neutral about them, and Funko Fusion looks kind of neat, a greatest hits of all the IP that Funko has gotten access to, translated into a third-person action game and looks like a fun romp. A very cozy looking title is Garden Witch Life, one that is about as self-explanatory as it can get, since you play as a witch who is tending to a garden. with the larger goal of breeding a magical food forest and to attract adorable animals to come live in. You are doing life sim crafting stuff like gathering resources through chopping trees or mining, with bits of exploration adventure, although without combat as far as I can tell. As such, it looks to be in a similar space to something like Yonder the Cloudcatcher Chronicles, but with a witchy theme and does look pretty cozy. The follow-up to Grapple Dog from 2022 is Grapple Dog's Cosmic Canines, which sees the addition of a new playable character which kind of looks like the shadow to Sonic, being a little bit more dark and edgy in design and wielding a gun as well. It sees the return of the grappling hook that the original game is known for, but adds in more action elements, and oh, if you were confused like me, this is not a co-op game, nor does it support co-op, rather being single player only, where you can switch between the two characters. Just a quick one here in Gunfire Reborn, Realm of Frost and Inkwash, a paid DLC to one of the best roguelite first-person shooters, which is similar to their previous DLCs, adding 2 new characters and 4 new weapons, which results in even more variety for this game. As the title proposes, the gimmick of these 2 characters are using ink and ice respectively, making this even better. We also have the 1.0 release of Hive Jump 2 Survivors this week, which itself is the sequel to a game from 2017, but radically changed up the genre into the Vampire Survivors style Bullet Heaven title. This adds a new area in the Mushroom Forest, a new character, new weapons and a giant boss, and releases out of early access after a relatively short 3 months or so. After a little bit of a delay, the frantic first-person shooter I Am Your Beast should be out this week, one of the games that got a tremendous amount of momentum during the most recent Steam Next Festival, having one of the most played demos and gaining a large number of wishlists as a result. You play as a Sam Fisher type who is pissed off at getting called in for one last mission one too many times, now having to face the goons of the organization that he was once a part of, with the fast-paced action being key. This should have been one of the top 10 releases of the week, but I already gave it that spot in a previous video, but it was delayed, so I wanted to highlight some other games. An interesting looking side-scrolling brawler is Immortal Hunters, one with an interesting world and setups and decent looking action. The Immortal Hunters were under the employ of the church and were used to battle against the servants of the Snake God, but now God is dead, killed by the very church that used his power to conquer the world, and as one of the 4 last surviving hunters, survive, expose the lies of the cardinals, and find the reborn God before the world gets destroyed. While it describes itself as a beat-em-up, this has a more action RPG looking user interface of skill cooldowns, a health orb and a resource orb, so very much side-scrolling Diablo and could be cool. After the successful release of Kingdom Rush 5 Alliance back in July 2024, the developers at Ironhide have turned their attention to supporting their other games with Kingdom Rush Vengeance and the Pirate Kings campaign. This adds 5 new pirate theme levels where you have to defeat the 5 Pirate Kings using a new hero and a new tower in order to do so, and looks like more excellent tower defense from the developer that are the best at this. We also have the release of Mirthwood, an ambitious looking open world life sim action adventure RPG in which you can customize your own character and explore this medieval fantasy world. There are survival elements like hunger that you need to be aware of, so there is resource gathering and crafting. Eventually, you will be able to build your own house with systems like farming and customization, along with quests to undertake and key decisions to make. Although I wonder how much consequences there will be and if these decisions will be on the level of a Witcher 3. There is combat of course, which is a little bit more involved than what you would find in a life sim game, since you can dodge roll for example, along with RPG leveling and skill cards, not to mention the full simulation of NPCs as well, and looks very ambitious indeed. It's an interesting week for boss rush titles since in addition to NanoApostle mentioned earlier, we also have Nimbusfall, one that is, admittedly, more low fidelity in presentation with the simple pixel art, but yet there's a charm to this game that draws me to it. There are 25 bosses and 10 different upgradable weapons to choose from, having 4 difficulty levels so you can skill it up to see how each boss changes, and does look kind of awesome being the hidden gem of the week. We also have the Steam and Xbox release of PICO Park 2, after previously releasing on Switch, a co-op puzzle platformer for 2 to 8 players, in which players must work together in order to progress. The original from 2021 is very popular for good reasons, and this sequel looks to introduce even more puzzles and minigames for maximum fun. But to be honest, this looks like absolute mayhem and ripe for trolling, so maybe find some friends to play this with, although friends might be just about as likely to screw you over as some randos on the internet. I'll be giving away 3 copies of this game in this week's newsletter, so subscribe via the link in the description below to be eligible. On paper, one of the most hyped titles is REKA, essentially another witchy live sim title, but if you have been around video games in the past 5 years or so, I'm sure that you would have recognized the chicken-footed hut of the Baba Yaga at the start of the trailer. Yes, indeed, it is a witch live sim game, but not just any witch, but more of the crones from Slavic mythology. You are doing very crafting live sim stuff, like gathering resources and upgrading your home, but can also come across human settlements, taking on quests to help or hinder the local villagers, and even tame wildlife and to bring them home, all with a degree of procedural generation as well, and looks well made. I've also had my eye on this title for a while since RP7 Spin Your Own Encounter is a roguelite slots title that sees you randomizing enemies and items that you come across as your character moves back and forth on top of the tiles. As such, it is slots adjacent, but is not a symbol builder like Luck Be a Landlord, being an interesting twist with a cute art style as well. This next title looks to be kind of neat, being a flight sim action title that is set underwater for some reason instead of space, where in Stardiver, you are piloting your ship in an underwater world and come across all sorts of enemies, including giant mechs and even sea monsters. There's more to this game than just combat, since you can explore, scan points of interest and learn about the ancient civilization, as well as resource gathering and crafting, which, to be honest, I'm not confident will work for this game, but hey, I'll leave the developers to prove me wrong. I also previewed Towerborne when looking at the upcoming games of the month, being off note since it comes to us from developer Stoic, the developer of the Banner Saga, whose last release was in 2018, so they kind of fell off the face of the earth until now. It was also revealed that this game is being published by Xbox, so there might have been some funding or partnership agreement there, since this seems like a live service game, a side-scrolling action-adventure RPG with a cool look. However, the concern here is player population, since Blightbound by Ronimo Games and published by Devolver was similar but didn't do so well, and in a curious move, they are releasing in Steam Early Access and then Xbox and Game Pass in 2025. So if Concord is anything to go by, I'm not sure if the player numbers will make sense for this game. So it is always interesting in games, so let's see how this does. From the developer of the recent 1.0 release Nova Drift comes Utopia Must Fall, a smaller game that must have been in development for a while as they worked on finishing up their other game, being a base defense arcade shooter similar to games like Missile Command. It is very Jeff Minter-like in terms of the trippy visuals and colour, and looks kind of cool, so if you want a high score chase type of experience, this is the one to check out. I almost missed this release, but Void's Vigil is of interest since it comes to us from the developer of games like Skelly Celeste and Bone Razor Minions, and is a Bullet Heaven style roguelite, this time with more of a sci-fi theme. You are battling robotic hordes with your drones and have unique builds in each run with their signature pixel art style, which continues to look awesome. We also have the Steam release of What the Car, which was previously an Apple Arcade exclusive, being a puzzle exploration game that has you playing as a car with legs. Why? Because you can, and that's what the developers made, and if their previous games like What the Golf and What the Bet are anything to go by, they would have found clever ways to subvert expectations on what it means to drive a car in a video game. I love their sense of humour, so this would be neat, with the different ways to race in-game being the highlight and simply looks wonderful. Another neat looking game is WildFront, not Wild Frost in case you were wondering, a roguelite deck builder with a monster taming element, where you can assemble a team and use them to do battle with the enemy. Many games have tried adding more controllable units, but that seems to bog things down, but maybe this developer has found the answer and this game should be free as well, so no harm checking it out. Here's a strange one in Yars Rising, where indeed it is based on the Atari classic Yars Revenge, but under WayForward, developer of Shantae, it has turned into a full-on anime girl Metroidvania. Now, of course, it is a Metroidvania, so I'm interested in checking it out, with its legacy being in the form of hacking minigames which play similar to the original, but the core game itself is quite different. After struggling a little bit with speaker hats, hotels, and the asteroids survival game, modern Atari seems to be hitting their stride with the acquisition of Digital Eclipse and shifting their focus to become more of a preservationist, which allows them to take wilder swings like this game, which is always interesting to see. This one's for indie game developers. The free indie game marketing resources are ready, so sign up via the link in the description below to get it in your mailbox. One of the most anticipated live sim titles in development is Chef RPG, essentially Stardew Valley, but where you are running restaurants, de-emphasizing the farming part and putting more of a focus on running successful businesses. Of course, you do have to source the ingredients through hunting animals, catching fish, foraging for mushrooms, and eventually being able to grow your own as well. But the focus of all of this is the restaurant. There are the expected villager relationship systems, and you can even open multiple restaurants, which you should probably be able to automate in some way and has the potential to be the next big thing. Here's a little bit of a surprise for frequent viewers of the channel, since the release date for Storm Edge was just confirmed not too long ago, being a pixel art action roguelite, so of course I'm in. You play as heroes from a guild of mages sworn to stop elemental storms in order to save the world, with mobility and dodging enemy attacks being a central strategy here, along with powerful screen-clearing special attacks and abilities. The pixel art is on point, although I would have preferred outlines, and I swear I've seen these skeleton enemy sprites before, but it still looks to be another good entry in the genre. Alright, that's a lot of game, but the best is yet to come, such as Caravan Sandwich, a gorgeous exploration adventure game where our heroine sets out in her camper van in search of her sister. She wanders the post-apocalypse and explores abandoned structures with an upgrade system for the van which allows you to access new areas. You can stop in town to talk to NPCs, and the developer explicitly states that it's a no combat, no death, no timer kind of game, looking very cozy and pleasant. Finally, after about 5 years and 6 months, we have the 1.0 release of Satisfactory, a first-person factory builder that is one of the most popular games in the space, and has been a long time coming, since OGs will remember that this first launched in early access way back when on the Epic Games Store. Now this is from Coffee Stain Studios, which is under the Embracer Group banner, hence the asterisks, but without a doubt, this game is an accomplishment and has so many systems and stuff in it for you to optimize the heck out of, and is a tinkerer's kind of game, made even better with co-op support, so I'm very interested to see where they go from here, since supporting the game with additional content seems like a no-brainer to me. Another game which I'm looking forward to is Drill Core, one part Oxygen Not Included and one part Dome Keeper, where you command a group of miners to dig, build and gather resources, but then have to defend your base from enemies that come from above. That means constructing automated defenses and turrets, and is a roguelite, so if your core explodes and you lose a run, there is some progression carryover to the next run and looks like a hit as well. Watch this video for a ranked list of the best pixel art indie games.
Galaxy.